part interview, part commentary track, all podcast. Watching Robocop with Kid Power. Our very special guest, Jack Graham.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Watching Robocop with Kit Power, episode 20. We finally made it into the 20s. Thank you so much for joining me again. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Thank you for your quite extraordinary patience. It has been a long time between episodes, and I guess we should talk about that first. It's been, close to a year since Watching Robocop last downloaded into your ears. I appreciate there's been some material I've put up in the meantime on other projects, but Watching Robocop took a bit of a hiatus there for a while, and I guess I could talk a bit about why. So it's just been an incredibly busy period. I think that's the long and short of it. I've had a lot of writing projects I've been desperately trying to get done. My writing career is in an interesting place right now, where I'm starting to get a certain amount of notice. I'm starting to have a certain amount of success, but it's really important at this stage, I think, to put my shoulder to the wheel and really try and produce as much as I possibly can, and try and hopefully create a bit of momentum. You know, the successes obviously are wonderful. I had a short story appear in New Fears 2, which was a huge highlight of last year. Since we last spoke, my novella The Finite has come out with Black Shot Press and is getting some just wonderful reviews beyond anything I could have hoped for. And similarly, my non-fiction book on the movie Tommy, that's also surfaced with PS Publishing. That also came out in July this year. And again, the critical notices for that have been staggering, frankly. Those of you familiar with my life in horror work, I mean, the Tommy essay is in a lot of ways a 30,000 word My Life in Horror about this absolutely incredible movie. And it's both surreal and wonderful to see the response it's getting from people, and to feel that it's quite humbling and quite moving to feel that people are getting what you're doing. And it really feels to me, because that is my book on Tommy. It's absolutely not it's not history, it's not a textbook, it's not a reference book, it's not the ultimate book about the movie from a technical point of view, but it really is about my experiences with that film, which is, I think, where I've got to with a non-fiction, and indeed with work like this. You know, I think what I've got to offer is me. What I've got to offer is my perspective. That's the thing that's unique, so that's what I did. But it's obviously there's inevitably one's ego is certainly tied up in that to a degree. It has to be, however much you try and pretend it isn't, or try and reduce that psychologically, because the important thing is to write good work. But of course, it's immensely gratifying when the book's out in the world and people are saying nice things. And I mean, no less a person than Lucy Tribble, who is Ken Russell's widow, wrote just an incredible review of the Tommy book on Facebook. She read it the day after she got the print copy as well, we know, because when we sent it to her, and she clearly just devoured the book in one sitting and immediately took to social media. So if you follow me on Twitter at @KitGonzo, the pinned tweet, which I imagine is going to be up there for a while, chaps, is exactly that, is Lisa's review. So I have been keeping busy. I have been working very hard, and on the podcasting front, I've been busy as well. It looks like Wrong With Authority is probably being discontinued, at least for the foreseeable future. I'm sure we'll get together when we can, but the truth is we're all incredibly busy now. Jack Graham and Daniel Harper are working on I Don't Speak German, which is one of the most, I just think, an incredibly important project, where Daniel filters his 3 years now of listening to far-right and alt-right podcasters and YouTubers and so forth, and he and Jack pick a key figure from that movement, or a key part of that movement, each sort of week/fortnight, and discuss it. It's heavy going, but it is also, it's Jack and Daniel, and they are delightful podcasters and wonderful human beings, so they managed to find ways to make that entertaining, even though it's also very heavy, and I obviously thoroughly recommend it. But I've been working on What the Hell Is Wrong With Us with George Daniel Lee. It's sort of a continuation of My Life in Horror, basically. That column's coming to an end. I've only got 8 essays left to write on My Life in Horror, and part of what's going on with me right now is deciding what those final 8 essays need to be in order for me to close that out in style. But what the hell is wrong with this is stuff that George. It's any kind of art or cultural artifact that George and I have a shared love for. Sometimes it'll be something that one of us loves and the other likes. Sometimes it'll be something we both love, but that's the basic concept. So the net's a bit wider than My Life in Horror. It doesn't have the kind of restriction of it having to be childhood, and the range is massive. I mean, we've already covered things as diverse as Marilyn Manson, Clive Barker's We World, Stephen King's It. Obviously, I was going to talk about It, but also like Poppy Z. Bright's Exquisite Corpse, and and When the Wind Blows, the Raymond Briggs graphic novel, I guess, although when it came out there wasn't such a thing, which was a huge influence on The Finite, and for that episode we got Laura Marrow to come in and talk to us as well. And we've done some kind of hot take stuff as well, so we covered Game of Thrones a couple of weeks after the finale was broadcast. We started talking about that, so we did quite an in-depth episode on our feelings on that as a cultural event, really, which it was. And we're recording very shortly with Jack Graham on the Joker movie, because we've all seen that and we all have thoughts. So that's really a really fun project. I think, to be honest, the reason that's happening more often than Robocop has been is it's just easier. There's no requirement to get the film lined up at both ends. I don't have to talk a new guest through how to use a tech. George is a very experienced podcaster, so we just plug in and talk, which does make scheduling easier, and it does make the recording process easier. So that is carrying on. Kit and It, which, the first episode did come out on this feed a while back. That is going to be happening again soon, now that episode 2's out. And I've got some people who are desperate to get on. And trying to remember, there's something else on the podcast. Oh yes, watching Tommy. That's the other thing that's happening, of course. There's a kind of celebration and I guess kind of in a weird way, kind of closure, I guess, on the Tommy project. I'm going to record a limited series of commentary tracks watching Tommy rather than watching Robocop, and I've already done one of those with Steve Shaw from Black Shark, who's the guy who published The Finite, so that'll be interesting. And I'm also going to, but I've got a few more people lined up for that as well. So that, as I say, that'll be a limited run. I'm not planning on doing that like Robocop, which is, I basically plan to do this show forever. Tommy will be a limited run, but it will be nice to do, and I'm looking forward to that. The first episode was fun, and it's good to watch that movie with other people, to be honest, because I find it's not something I have any kind of distance on at all, but it's quite nice watching it and talking to other people and getting their perspectives on it. So listen out for more of that, because there will be more Tommy coming. So good times, busy times, and again, I just want to say thank you to all of you who are watching Robocop fans who've been like, when's Robocop coming back? And the answer is right fucking now, kids. And what better guest to have to kick off the second decade, if you will, of Robocop than Jack Graham, who, I mean, what can I even say about Jack? Jack's one of he's one of my favourite podcasters, full stop. He's one of my favourite cultural commentators, full stop. He's an incredibly intelligent man, incredibly articulate, very funny, very wise, I think. Also, one of the things I love about Jack, he has an incredible questioning quality. He's got a really restless mind, and he's whenever I think you engage with his work, you do get a sense of a live intelligence, but also someone who is trying to make sense of the world, honestly trying to make sense of the world. And these are all qualities that I find deeply appealing. It's been one of the great honours of my kind of creative journey as a writer and as a podcaster to be able to count Jack Graham as a friend. And the fact that I still find it slightly surreal that he's happy to go on microphone and talk with me, frankly, because I always think I always feel completely outclassed by him as a broadcaster and as a critic. But there it is, we're friends, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And it's a wonderful thing to have my dear friend Jack Graham come on the show and talk Robocop with me. And bring it out of retirement. And it's nice too, because I didn't actually know he was a big fan of the movie. I kind of naively assumed that it was just part of the standard 80s fare. But as you'll discover on this podcast, he's quite the Robocop fan, and that's wonderful. So it really is it really is a celebration, this one. So a classic for the archives of watching Robocop. Amongst other things, during the course of our discussion, you will hear us discuss the liminality of 80s and the future within the movie. You'll hear us talk about sadism as bullying and as a mode of government, as above, so below. occasionally slipping into talking in generalities while action's happening. A wonderful riff on the Alan Bastard connection to Dick Jones, the glory of stop frame animation, and the wonder of ED209. And conversations about Why the Helmet and Weller's Brilliance and lots of other good things. So, without any further ado, 10 minutes, I'm so sorry. Let's get the hell on with this show before you all just turn off and discuss. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further delay at all, please welcome to the show Jack fucking Graham. So it is my great pleasure to welcome to the show Jack Graham. Jack, how does the evening find you, my friend?
Pretty good. I'm delighted to finally be on this show, which I've wanted to be on for ages. Can't think why you've never invited me on before. I think you secretly didn't want me on, but I've managed to embarrass you to the point where you feel obliged. So that's a real triumph for me.
Well, you know what? I feel like we're returning the favour here because you're effectively bringing this show out of retirement, having got me to bring the Shabcast out of retirement. So I feel like we're kind of.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think this works quite well. I'm counting this as you returning the favour, so that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, we were supposed to be doing an episode of Kit and It, but my torrent for a cam of Part 2 hasn't finished downloading yet. That's of course a joke. I never steal any media at all.
Yes, no, not at all. What we mean is just haven't managed to get down to the cinema yet, but that's fine. No, we'll stick a pin in that. We'll come back to it because that'll be. I look forward to that conversation. I will be interested in hearing your opinions on Part 2. And indeed, hopefully, we'll be catching up on Mike about the Joker before too long because I'm going to see that this weekend. So
yeah, the Joker.
Yes, I'm very interested. I've both you and George have seen it, and I have to kind of not mute your Twitter feeds, but I have to keep skipping past your commentary until I've seen it on Sunday. So, but hopefully we'll get on Mike.
I have talked about it a fair bit on Twitter. Yep, I'm that guy. I've tried to be non-spoilery about it, but every time I talk about it on Twitter and trying to be sort of carefully non-spoilery, people reply to me with huge spoilers in their tweets. So,
yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? So yeah, that's fine. But we'll get to those conversations, I'm sure. But for tonight, it's Robocop, which I'm really thrilled about because I actually haven't seen the movie in an obscene number of months, considering it is, of course, the greatest movie ever made. So I'm happy to be watching it with you tonight. And we will start with the 5 questions, the same 5 questions I ask every guest on the show. And we will start with question number 1: how old were you when you first saw Robocop?
Right, I'm not entirely sure, but I think I would have been 13, something like that. I'd literally never heard of it, and I just had to move house because sort of complicated family stuff, and I'd had to move away from my school and all my friends and stuff like that. And I was just starting to make friends in my new school, and there was one kid. I'm afraid I can't remember his name. And he lived sort of quite near me in the new place where I was living. And it was one of those, you know how sometimes when you're young, you know, you kind of make tentative friendships and they don't take, you know.
Yeah.
You'll sort of pal around with somebody for maybe a week or a couple of weeks or something like that. And it's fine, but it just doesn't take, you know, it wears off. And it's one of those sort of aborted friendships. And it was one of those. He's probably a nice guy, you know, I've pleasant memories of him, but I'm afraid I don't really remember anything much about him. I don't remember his name. But he did introduce me to Robocop, which I'd never heard of. He lent me the VHS. And yeah, I would have been about 13, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So whoever he was, clearly the unnamed hero of this tale, which is fantastic.
Indeed, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So question number 2: how many times have you seen Robocop?
Right. Let me see if I can work this out. There would have been that first time, and then I'm absolutely certain that I watched it again, like probably immediately. So that's 2, and then I'm fairly certain I would have watched it again once in some way or other between that and the time that I bought the VHS, and then I would have watched the VHS when I bought it, so that's 4, and then I definitely would have watched the VHS like another time after that, so that's 5, and then I would have watched it again when I bought the DVD. They've done well out of me, these people. And then I definitely would have watched the Blu-ray when I bought the Blu-ray.
Nice.
So that's 7 times.
So that's got to be 7.
That's got to be like a bare minimum. No, it must be a bare minimum of 8 because I know I've seen the Bowdlerized version on television.
The TV edit version with the yeah, which runs to about 40 minutes, I think, because they
Yeah.
just cut so much.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're going to be a mean mother crusher, as for some reason.
That's the one. Yeah, they just shredded the film. Oh goodness me. Okay,
So-
well there you go.
Yeah, I think it's a minimum, an absolute minimum of 8 times. I think it's probably more like...
Okay.
There's got to be a couple I'm forgetting, so it's between 8 and 10 times, I would say.
Yeah, you probably we'll probably be hitting you into double figures tonight if you're not already there. Okay, that's interesting.
Something like that, yeah.
And a film clearly that you enjoyed enough to buy in 3 separate formats. So that's,
I love
that's
it.
encouraging.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I love this movie. Cards on the
Great.
table.
Fantastic. So question number 3, when's related to that? When's the last time you saw Robocop?
Right, I think it was probably when I bought the Blu-ray, this sort of, because I'm pretty sure they re-released it in like an anniversary edition that had both the theatrical and the director's cuts in it to coincide with the release of that remake that actually didn't happen. So yeah, so I would have bought it then, and I know I watched it when I bought it on Blu-ray. So whenever it was that the remake that doesn't exist wasn't released, that's when I last watched it.
Okay. Yep. No, that's cool. I mean, as it happens, they're bringing out a still Arrow videos are bringing out a steelbook edition, which I've already got on pre-order. So I've had to buy it again.
Yeah, you're like me with Doctor Who. You know, there are some Doctor Who stories that I must have bought about 10 times in different media. You know.
Well, actually, on that one, I am slightly concerned that I'm going to end up buying Trial of a Time Lord again, and that doesn't feel like something a human being should do, but it looks like I'm probably going to, because they're bringing that out, aren't they?
I've already done it.
Oh, you've already done it? Okay,
I've already done it. I have very fond memories of Trial of a Time Lord. I think
Me
it's
too.
I think it's probably underrated. I sort of feel weird saying that, but I think that's probably true.
I can't separate it from it was the first televised Who I saw, so, you know, I mean, what are you going to do?
It wasn't the first televised Who I saw, of course, but it was the first televised Who that I really seriously followed. It was because of course it's all one story. It's 14 episodes, and it's all sort of technically one story. And I remember, I definitely, it's the first time I definitely watched every episode of an entire series, because it's the first time I taped it. I remember being a little kid, and I remember, come hell or high water, I'm going to record every bloody episode of this. And I ended up with the whole thing across 2 VHS tapes, home-recorded VHS tapes.
Nice.
So, yeah, it does have very fond associations for me.
That's pretty totemic, isn't it? I mean, for me, actually, funnily enough, I still stand by this. It's actually, I watched it on a black and white telly. We didn't have a colour telly when that was out, and I still maintain it's actually better in black and white.
Yeah. I suspect a lot of the Colin Baker era probably is better. Although the weird thing is, part of what I love, I mean, let's not get drawn into this, but I'll just say in passing, part of what I love about the Colin Baker era is just how gaudy and over the top and fucking batshit it is.
It is. It's like, if it has a redeeming feature, that's it, isn't it? Let's be honest. Okay, so question, dragging us back onto the subject of Robocop, our film for this evening. So question number 4, no wrong answers to this. Why do you, Jack Graham, think Robocop is the greatest movie ever made?
Right. Okay. Well, there's a serious answer to this, which is it isn't, because there's no such thing. There's a slightly less serious answer to this, which is that it isn't, because of course The Shining is the greatest film ever made. There's an answer that's more in the spirit of things, which is it has a really good claim, I would say, to being at least one of the greatest Hollywood movies ever made, because it's absolutely one of the best Hollywood science fiction movies ever made. It's absolutely one of the best horror movies ever made. It's absolutely one of the best cop thrillers ever made. So it excels tremendously in at least 3 genres, right? And it also happens to be one of the finest Hollywood satires ever made. Like, I was kind of talking about this a little bit on Twitter because the subject came up, and like, a lot of people, if you ask them what's the greatest sort of Hollywood movie that's a satire, they'd probably say something like Paddy Chayefsky's Network, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I really fucking hate that film. I think it's ridiculously overrated. I think it's silly. I think it's smug. I think it's elitist. I think its points are just, they completely miss the mark. I think RoboCop is a finer satire than The Network. I'll go on the record with that. So
Nice.
this is a brilliant Hollywood movie that's also a political satire. So that's 4 major genres of cinema in which this film really excels. It has a genuine claim to be among the greatest. So if you say that's 4, then that's got to add up to something, isn't it?
You speak my language, my friend. That's exactly my argument whenever I get into this.
Then there's a silly answer to it, which is Ed.20
Ed.20 Well, I think, and there's the kind of the honest answer, which is like, I was 13 when I first saw it, right? I mean, that is the perfect age to see this movie for the first time, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, well, with that, and the version of Robocop we're watching tonight, I understand, is probably the theatrical cut. We'll find out for sure when we get to the scene.
It's a long, complicated story, but we think it's probably the theatrical cut.
So, if you're ready, I'm assuming that we're both looking at the MGM Lion as we're starting here with it on pause. Is that right?
Yep, the lion has just started to open its mouth.
Oh, fantastic. So we're synchronized. So those of you who are obviously wanting to sit and watch the greatest movie ever made and listen to the two of us talk at the same time, and firstly, for anyone who is doing that, just get down with your badge yourself. You're fantastic. Don't ever change. But secondly, we are about to start watching the movie, so I will count backwards from 5. And when I get to 0, we will hit play and we will be watching the movie. So, Jack, with fingers on the pause button, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go Robo. And the lion roars and we're off to the movies.
He does. And again. And I'm probably going to say stuff that loads of people have said before, but I have very fond memories of this iconic Orion Pictures logo.
It was a mark of quality for an all too brief but shining period. It certainly was. I
associate it very strongly with seeing Excalibur for the first time as well.
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
Excalibur is absolutely one of my favourite movies. One of those movies that just blows your head off the first time you see it.
Yeah, it's fairly classic, I think, in that regard.
Robocop.
Yep. And then straight to the Russell T Davies news.
Yep. Also
so beloved of the first couple of years of New Who.
I think it's also a bit of a quote from maybe The Man Who Fell to Earth, the sort of wall of televisions there.
Right. Yeah.
And everything's just ever so slightly wrong, like the way that the televisions turn into their smiling eyes, obviously fake smiles, and then
Yes, and as other commentators have pointed out to me, the female co-host was in real life on the US show Entertainment Weekly, so the idea that she's hosting the news in this universe is yet another clue, quite apart from the news stories, which are less subtle clues that things are horribly awry. But it's a nice touch. It's the idea of news as entertainment. It's one of the things that's being introduced in this. It's one of the things I bang on about with this movie, but it's the storytelling is incredibly compressed. Yeah. They cram an awful lot of world building into this first 5 minutes. They do it, with a laugh as well. I mean, as we're watching the buy a robotic heart commercial in the middle of the news.
There you go already, cybernetics. We've established that in this world, cybernetics is an active technology.
Right.
You can implant machinery into human bodies, as well as the satirical element of it being, advertising private medical care in the middle of a news infotainment segment,
Yeah. Well, and the fact that the explicit linking of capitalism with that, because it's the Yamaha Sony heart, right? So it's not just it's really, really smart.
Absolutely, and it's sledgehammer subtle, but that's great sometimes,
Yeah. I don't. I mean, this is my favourite movie of all time. So subtlety is not something that is high on my list of important elements in storytelling.
There are a hell of a lot of truths about our world that are very, very unsubtle, but even so, loads of people don't notice them, and certainly the TV news affects to not notice them. So sometimes you need a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
Right. And I do think it's worth pointing out as well that that's a news broadcast that predates Fox News. When this movie was made, Fox News didn't yet exist, and yet
it's very ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sees the way. Reaganite society is going.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good, because it's a funny thing about the movie, I think, is that it does exist in terms of the time. It does exist in this liminal space where it's normally set in the future, but it's also very, very clearly the 80s. I mean,
Oh yeah,
you know.
yeah. Well, all science fiction is about now rather than the future, isn't it?
Sure.
I mean, not always. There is speculative science fiction that is kind of a genuine attempt to project what's going to be happening in technology and politics in the future. But let's face it, a lot of that is pretty dry, and they always get it wrong. The science fiction that lives, ironically, and you can probably extend this to all fiction. The fiction that lives is the fiction that's intensely of its moment. In a strange way, it manages to be more universal.
Well, we've talked about this before, haven't we, with popular fiction, and with, when we talk about, I mean, I know that's one of the things that you think's what makes Shakespeare so important. It's just the time in which he existed and wrote, and we've said that about Dickens as well, and my own thing with Fleming and King, and it's the same thing, right? They exist very much in the era in which they are writing. They're very much sort of journaling the era in which they live. And as you say, somehow that becomes something that survives past that, becomes something with more sort of longevity.
And here we're into one of the very strange maneuvers that this film pulls, which is that it opens with kind of a tough cop guy thing where it's your client's a murdering scumbag, a cop killer, etc. It's very that you think from that you're going to be in for something that's very right-wing, authoritarian, quite conventional in its attitude towards police and law and order. It's going to be a story about tough cops standing up for law and order and authority against the scum on the streets. The
lethal weapon reverse, if you will.
Yeah, the humans in the fort versus the swarthy hordes outside, and then it immediately pulls this weird sort of rug out from under your feet thing, where the cops have suddenly become squeezed workers talking about unionizing.
Yeah,
it's weird, and it's ambiguous and ambivalent, and it kind of destabilizes any easy reading. But just that immediate sort of rug out from under your foot yank, it's a real head fuck. It really starts you thinking.
Yeah, and it's counterpointed as well, where it undercuts the kind of the immortality of the cops, because they're having that conversation as they're also dealing with the fact that yet another guy's died. I mean, we've heard about the body count of the police in the news story, but it creates the idea of this background of we know that the cops have just been privatized. I mean, that's one of the things I find really interesting. The notion that part of the reason perhaps that they're talking about striking is because they've been privatized. Yeah. Which, the notion that maybe because we're privatized we can strike. I mean, that feels kind of a counterintuitive thing to us, like in the real world where it's, public sector where the unions tend to be stronger. But I like the kind of, in the specific realm of the police, that's a really kind of interesting idea.
Well, it's kind of it's sledgehammer subtle, and that's not a criticism, because I love it. But it's kind of an obvious tack for satire to take if you're, as this is now pretty explicitly doing, setting out to jab ferociously at Reaganism and Reaganite society of the 80s, then kind of an obvious tack to take is, well, what if they privatize this? What if they privatize that? They're privatizing everything else, aren't they? What if they privatize the police? And what if they privatize the air? Which is something that also pops up in satirical moments, pops up in Spaceballs. What if they privatize, etc., etc.? So what if they privatize the police? And we could go into the real world politics, which is that they didn't do that because they want the police to be the arm of the state, precisely because they don't want them to be able to unionize and strike, because the capital knows it can rely on the state to enforce the rule of capital. But within the sort of bubble world of the satire that this is going for, this is what it's about. It's about neoliberalism. If neoliberalism just continues to go the way it's going, they're going to privatize every fucking thing that isn't nailed down. Then they're going to prize up the nails and privatize those as well. And that's going to involve everything we need. We need to just keep our society functioning, and eventually the police. So what if that happens? And then if that did happen, it never will for this precise reason. But if that did happen, you would end up with this situation where the class position of police, they'd suddenly stop being this layer of people who were there. They were aligned with the ruling class. They'd suddenly be more. Their social position would actually be more like the workers that they're there to control. And this film opens that possibility.
It's so ballsy, though, isn't it? I mean, it's so because it's just the way it subverts, as you say, the kind of classic Hollywood image of the cop and the coppers here. And I name checked Lethal Weapon earlier because I think that's a good kind of counterpoint. Which, and by the way, trash as they are, I love the Lethal Weapon movies, but but this is like just so far next level, isn't it? It's just
Yeah. I love the way that these sort of sleazy bastards around the boardroom, they're talking like the authoritarian gibberish that ends up on their privatized news show. They're talking the cancer is crime.
Yeah.
And what they're actually talking about is the fact that, the side effects of the system that we're benefiting from is inconveniencing us slightly. So, we've privatized everything. There's no longer any social services or social welfare or anything like that. So what we need in place of social workers and healthcare professionals and mental health care professionals and education and stuff like that. What we need is militarized police and prisons, which is, of course, exactly what happened, exactly what neoliberalism did.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's really good. I mean, the other thing I like about this sequence is that the constant use of the OCP logo and the use of their own slogans. It's like they're constantly having to reinforce their own brainwashing on themselves.
Yeah.
Their constant use of the corporate language. I mean, that whole thing about good business is where you find it, and that they talk in advertising slogans.
Absolutely,
they really do.
And they're such posers as well, like Dick Jones there swaggering around the room, and the old man at the head of the table doing this sort of tough guy business, and even what's his name, the young up and comer guy, I can't remember the character's name.
Bob Morton, yeah.
Bob Morton, yeah. The way he sort of he extra loudly and aggressively applauds everything the old man says, like a total smarmy lick spit. It's great.
But I also love the way he sulks when Dick Jones is delivering. And of course, at this point, you don't know why he's sulking. We find out later it's because he's got the backup project, But I love that it's the little character notes like that, and it's Miguel Ferrer, isn't it? And it's a wonderful performance from him. I think I really enjoy him.
He really is a total overgrown schoolboy. That guy. Oh, the guy I don't like because he's in my way is talking. I'm not going to applaud because I don't like him.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, Ed.209 is on screen, and you gotta love Ed.209.
Yeah, no, one of the great bits of designs, and as I often say at this point in the movie, maybe the last great hurrah for stop motion.
Yeah,
in Hollywood, which is
gorgeous.
It's beautiful,
gorgeous stop motion. Yeah,
and it works so well for a robot.
It's a fantastic robot. I love it. And that's that ridiculously oversized silver fucking gun he takes out as well.
No, it's all glorious.
Yeah. The robot is fantastic because it's very imposing, but it's also obviously whoever designed it, really thought about what they were doing because it looks imposing and aggressive and high tech and everything, but it also does look kind of clunky and daft.
Yeah, it does look a bit crap, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's perfect. And this is iconic. Yeah, he throws the gun down and it's still saying, and then these techies go bananas.
Yeah,
because they've instantly, oh shit.
No, it's so great.
And then these corporate scumbags are pushing him away when he's trying to get help. Get out! Don't get away from me. I don't
get
want to be
the fuck
anywhere
away. Yeah, exactly. No, it's so great. And then the coup de grace.
I think I am watching the extended version.
Okay. No, it's absolute classic. That it really is because it's so I think the original cut, this sequence, I mean, the director's cut goes on longer. The original cut, he was shooting for a solid minute. And apparently the censors were just like, you really can't do that.
Spoil sports.
Yeah, but I think I genuinely think it's really funny. I mean, obviously it's horrible, but it is I don't know, there's a comedy element to it. It's almost like it's the Roadrunner Wile E. Coyote thing, isn't it? It's a live action cartoon. And it's so over the top.
And I love that the old man's response is, "I'm very disappointed, Dick."
Yeah.
You give a shit about the guy that's just been killed.
Again,
you sledgehammer subtle, but that's why it's great.
Yeah. Well, you might think the first time you watch it, he is disappointed because someone's just been killed, but no, he's disappointed because of the interest payments that the delays are going to cost, right? It's just it's so fucking brutal.
Yep. And Bob Morton has done, he's done the see your opportunity and take it thing.
Oh yes,
yeah,
yeah. No, he, and that's what I love about this. I mean, that's what I love about the OCP side of it. It's just there are no good guys in OCP. They're all scumbags, and that's kind of I love that decision to just make them all scumbag. Like, some of them are better at scumbaggery than others, but they're all just like vile.
And Dick Jones looking daggers at him. You just know Dick Jones got where he is by doing exactly the same thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely, doing it better and for longer.
Yeah.
And I love this as well. I love the kind of, because there is a naivety to Bob Morton. That's why, I mean, he's not any more likable as a character, really, because he's, given his druthers, he'd end up as a Dick Jones type. But he does have that naivety about, like, oh yeah, fuck the old man, I did what I needed to do. And it's like, yeah. How do you think he got where he did, dude?
That's right, yeah. Yeah, you're right. Fuck him over so you can climb over him, but you can't just do that. You have to then watch your back.
Yeah, exactly. You better kick away the ladder behind you, because otherwise...
Yeah. TJ Laser.
TJ Laser.
Again, sledgehammer subtlety. But
so
again,
great.
What it's attacking is so, is so ridiculous.
Yeah. It's also, that for me is one of the rare kind of like weird future modes. Why have they got square cups? I don't know. Because it's the future, and in the future there are square cups.
That's right. Yeah, it's like in Star Trek Generations, Captain Picard's family snaps. They've kind of got holographic edges around them. Why? Because it's the future.
Because it's the future. Oh, and now we meet probably my favourite criminal gang in cinema history, this lot.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They are just fantastic.
Yeah, and you've talked on other editions of this podcast about how well cast they are, to be visually distinct from each other.
Yep. Yeah.
And how they all kind of have their own, none of them are fleshed out tremendously, but they all have their own personalities and
yeah, just enough to give you a hook to hang them on.
Yeah.
But mainly, I just love the extreme psychopathology of them. I love how nuts they are from the very, very beginning. They completely I mean, these guys could give Scorpio from Dirty Harry a run for his money in terms of, sadistic sort of.
And this is kind of the same thing as we just saw in the OCP boardroom. I mean, I think it's even kind of laid out the same, with them all on either side of a long, in this case it's a van, but there's a visual echo of the OCP boardroom.
Yeah.
They're not doing this because they're impoverished and alienated outsiders. They're doing this because they're just a bunch of fucking, petty capitalist raiders. It's the same as above, so below. That's all this is.
Right. I mean, and of course, interestingly, the two will become explicitly linked later on, right? We find out that Clarence has been working with, has some connection to Dick Jones and works for him at least some of the time.
Yeah, yeah. Because, of course, OCP need the public to be well-behaved and obedient little drones in whatever, Delta City, is it they call it? But, that's going to involve OCP-sponsored prostitution, drug dealers, etc.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's kind of like in the movie Outland, where part of the sheriff, he's on a colony, a moon colony of Jupiter or something, and part of the sheriff's duties is to police the company-owned brothels and things like that.
Right. I mean, there's also, it's not a suggestion that's made explicit in the film, but there's a hint that maybe part of the reason that Dick Jones has a connection to this gang is because, the OCP have been using the gang and gangs like them to run down Detroit, to drive down property values so they can afford to buy the land to build Delta City. I mean, you could read it that way,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All part of the grand corporate conspiracy.
Again, is a perfect sledgehammer satire of what neoliberalism actually does.
Yeah.
You fuck something up until it doesn't work properly, and then you say, look, it doesn't work properly. We need to give it to the market. And you privatize it. Here in this scene, what OCP are essentially doing are they're launching a takeover bid of the city of Detroit. They're trying to privatize the city of Detroit. So they're doing to it what neoliberalism does to anything that isn't in the private sector. They're fucking it up so that they can sell it to a private concern.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, and, you know, in that, to have this gang, you know, their hideout be an abandoned steel mill.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like
a
rotting industry.
This motif is just everywhere in 80s cinema, Reaganite cinema. The post-industrial motif of the sort of the ruined works, you know, the ruined steel mill, the abandoned. It's in Nightmare on Elm Street. It's in Superman 3, as we've talked about before. It's fucking everywhere.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, the echoes of Freddy's Boiler Room are really striking visually, aren't they, as we're watching this?
Yeah.
The pipe work and all that.
And in that film, it is explicitly an analogue to hell, you know, with the red lighting and everything.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
The first appearance of the sexist sitcom.
Yes. Yeah.
Which will be a motif throughout the film.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true, but I love that story about Nancy Allen's first day on set, watching them filming that and just being like, what the fuck have I got myself into? I don't know if I've not heard Nancy Allen talk about that on mic. I can't remember where I picked that up from somewhere else. I don't know if it's true or not, but yeah. And it's kind of interesting. I guess we're establishing Murphy as a kind of, you know, tough guy here because he just shoots the guy and he's, you know.
Yeah, but he's by the book, isn't he? He's by the numbers. He shoots the first guy because he has to, but he spares a meal because he's got, you know, he has the opportunity to do so, which is, as it turns out, a very bad decision.
Yes.
But that's Murphy for you, which is...
There it is.
Yeah. Again, one of the glories of this film is the casting. We've talked about the troupe of villains. I mean, the casting of Peter Weller is brilliant because he's got this fantastic Gary Cooper, Henry Fonda thing going on where he just looks like the ultimate Boy Scout, you know.
Yeah.
Aside from being a very good actor.
Yeah, absolutely. And also I think in this scene, what's so great about that is we get to see that get completely, I mean, literally taken apart.
That's right. Yeah, this is where that gets you in this world.
Yeah, which is incredibly. I mean, I still think is incredibly shocking. I mean, I was 11 when I first saw it, and it broke things, you know.
Yeah. No,
but even now watching it, this is a tough sequence to watch, I think.
This bit is worse than the actual murder. Like the torturous murder that they put him through is bad enough, but this stuff leading up to it is worse because it's that slow grinding. You know, well, I mean, you've talked about this on this podcast before, which is that it's bullying. These are schoolyard bullies extrapolated. You know, and that's what this is. This is savage bullying, but with homicidal intent. And it's they're just they've got they've got the bug under the glass and they're just playing with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like, I mean, what's scarier than bullies with shotguns? I mean, that's just
yeah.
And no sense of consequences. I mean, that's just
yeah. And the
really...
the idiotic laughing at what he says is a brilliant signifier of the bully, because that's what bullies do. Whatever you say to them, they just laugh at you like you're an idiot.
Yeah, and laugh at each other, right? And just and it's just everything's hysterically funny.
Yeah, this is totally Henry Bowers and Biff and whatever his name is in the background.
Yeah.
The bullies always have. It's kind of sledgehammer subtle. It's a cliche. You know, there's one lead bully, and there's the ones who are kind of cowards who are hanging along in the background. But again, it works because what it's attacking needs that approach. This is horrible. I really hate stuff like this. I hate depictions of torture. But this is one of the films that will, I can stick with it. There are films I just won't watch because they contain depictions of torture, and I just know I can't. Like, movies. I mean, I don't make any judgment on them necessarily because I haven't seen them. But movies like Hostel and Wolf Creek, I don't watch them because I just know I'm not going to be able to cope with it. But, like, I can cope with the scenes in the Battle of Algiers. It's a strange comparison to make, and in this because I just feel like there's a point to it, and as grueling as it is, I mean, this is absolutely ghastly.
Yeah, no, it's hideous, and you're watching the extended cut, so you're getting a few few more seconds of it than
Yeah.
than I am. But yeah, it's really, really tough.
And again, it's
but-
it's that completely callous, giggly mocking that's even worse than the torture,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because as you say, it's pure sadism, and it's just it's that kind of there's something skin crawling about taking joy in inflicting that kind of level of pain and misery, isn't it? It's just something on a visceral level that's disturbing about that.
And it's something we've kind of skipped over. Another way in which it's clear that the gang of criminals are a mirror to the gang of criminals in the boardroom. We've skipped over the fact that it's made, again, with great economy in the dialogue. It's just packed in and on you go.
Yeah.
That he's been moved to that incredibly dangerous precinct because somewhere along the line he's come up in their records as, a prime candidate. So they've just moved him to a place where he's likely to get killed because they want to use him in the Robocop project.
And the kicker is they did that before ED209 broke down.
Yeah.
So they did that on spec in case. So they were quite prepared. So the opening news story with the cop getting killed and now this sequence, this is all stuff this is collateral damage for a backup plan. I mean, it's just like, it doesn't get much more cynical than that. It's really impressive.
In corporate culture, it's called externalities. That's what they call it.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And a lesser film would have made it a sort of a conspiratorial thing where OCP and Clarence knows what they're doing, and Clarence goes around killing cops because he knows that his masters in OCP need him to. And this doesn't do that. It doesn't make it sort of a crude, simple one-to-one conspiracy. It's just this completely savage system. It makes it systemic.
Well, I can't remember because this was written by two men, and I can't remember which one of them it is. But one of the men who wrote this was self-described as a Marxist.
Really?
Well,
there you go.
There you go. So, but I think that speaks to what you're talking about. There is that understanding that it's like it's not about an explicit codified conspiracy. It's about competing interests and about mutually sympathetic interests and how they overlap, right? And it's about forces at play,
Yeah. There's a fun. I mean, this film kind of buys into the Marxist model of base and superstructure. I mean, it kind of says, the economic basis of this society is that it's an increasingly hyper privatized corporate capitalist economic base. And everything that happens on top of that stems from it without it being this crude one-to-one conspiratorial setup. It's just from that basis, all these other things flow and they interact with each other naturally because they all flow from that same basis.
Yeah.
It's quite astonishing, actually, to find this in a Hollywood movie of the 80s.
It's pretty impressive. And I'm still not quite sure how they got away with it, but there you go. Well, I guess because it is also a big dumb action movie. I mean, I guess
this is it. They get away with it because it flies under the radar of people that aren't expecting it or aren't looking for it and don't see it because it's an action movie. Like snooty critics, they're not going to see this because what they're going to see is guns and bangs and flashes and car chases, and they're going to think, oh, it's stupid.
Yeah.
It's just a stupid science fiction thing with robots and guns, and so they don't see it. It flies. This is to fly off the subject again. This is what Doctor Who did over and over again. It got away with sometimes quite incredible political satire and political polemics and stuff like that. Like you look at something like The Sunmakers. It's breathtaking, but they got away with it.
It's got some shit to say, hasn't it?
And I mean, even if you read it, you can read it as a right-wing story, a right-wing metaphor. I think that's wrong, but you can read it that way, or as a very left-wing metaphor. Either way, it's saying incendiary stuff about society and politics and economics. And it just flies completely under the radar of people at the time, including people throughout the BBC, hierarchy, higher-ups, TV critics, parents. Mary Whitehouse didn't give a shit about stuff like that. She was worried when it was too scary or something like that, but she didn't care about. She didn't see those political metaphors, and it just flew under their radar because they looked at it and they thought, oh, it's just silly stuff about robots for kids. So it smuggles this stuff in, and this is what this movie does. It smuggles this stuff in under this veneer of being a dumb science fiction action film.
And I wonder about the impact on that on me as a kid, because I was young when I saw this, and it did have a seismic impact on me. And I do think that at least part of why that is because I was connecting with some of those deeper themes, even if I didn't realize it. Because the stuff I remembering as a kid, it wasn't all the kind of big action stuff. It wasn't all the kind of bloody executions and the rapist getting shot in the crotch and stuff. There were other details of the kind of stuff like the OCP logos and things like that did kind of connect with me and did kind of, that lurked around in my mind and made me think about, And I just wonder about, like, as someone sort of as a storyteller now in my 40s, I do wonder. I feel quite fortunate to have connected with something like this that's still kind of, I can look at this age and still be like, no, there's stuff going on under the hood of here that make it worth watching.
Absolutely.
Not that flashbang entertainment isn't worth watching, of course. I don't want to give that impression, but...
No, but this is a demonstration of what flashbang entertainment can do. Because there's no... I mean, I'm talking about it sort of being this deeper thing in disguise and smuggling stuff in. Yeah, that's true. But it also functions brilliantly as a science fiction action thriller. It really does. Yeah. That's why it works. And I think it's a brilliant demonstration of why this stuff actually... It works better in the sense of being more meaningful and a more powerful delivery of ideas and concepts and metaphors and stuff if it's not just spoon-fed to you. If it's actually a bit ambiguous and a bit ambivalent and a bit, it's given to you indirectly in hints. We've talked about how the storytelling is very compact. The way it delivers its themes is very compact as well. Because it has one of the hallmarks of all great narrative art, which is that its themes and its plot are very, very tightly and satisfyingly integrated. And it doesn't just tell you, it doesn't just say, corporations are bad. It just lets you see it unfold. And it puts in little dissonant noises as well. So it's not just this simple thing you're being spoon-fed. And it's actually more powerful. It puts the message across more powerfully than if it was just spoon-feeding it to you.
Yeah, and on that line about flying under the radar as well, I think one of the interesting things it does is because the cops are, because it's called Robocop and therefore nominally at least a cop is the hero of the story, that creates all kinds of assumptions in the minds of an audience about what kind of movie that they're watching. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that it does a really good job of playing that line fairly straight and yet at the same time subverting it in incredibly powerful way. Like, it does both, right? Because the cops are basically the good guys in this film, right? They are. Yeah. The villains, I mean, if there's a critique to be made of it, it's the way it displays all, like every single criminal in Detroit is just a psychopathic, lunatic murderer, like every single one of them without exception. There's no kind of there's no nuance there at all, and I guess that's the trade-off the movie makes in terms of the kind of social conditions and descriptions and that kind of thing. But the payoff is you get to do all the other stuff this film does, you know, because the hero is a cop, right?
Well, it does. I mean, I have just seen Joker, and without getting drawn into this aside, it does remind me a bit of Joker in some respects. And one of the things that Joker is going to get accused of, I think, by people on the left, is it's going to get this thing about, well, that the film offers no alternatives,
right?
And no, it doesn't. But that's not. I mean, that's not what it's for. It's not what it's trying to do.
Right.
And it's like with this. What Joker's trying to do, in my opinion, is it's trying to put on screen the psychic experience of living through the neoliberal turn, this sort of this powerful sense that people had from the 70s onwards, that suddenly everything had just gone fucking insane and the world just turned to shit. And this is kind of doing a similar sort of thing. It's doing it with the experience of living in Reaganite America. And it's not a perfect political treatise, because from my point of view, it would show the police in a more negative light, and their relationship with capital, and protectors of private property, and we'd have the working class, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not what this film is doing. What it's doing is a savage satire of a situation where all these options appear to have been just foreclosed upon, and what we have is just this fucking Reaganite hellscape forever, and the absurdity that's going to end up with. Because another thing this film does brilliantly is it always teeters just on the edge of being absurd. Everything is just, it's like a micron away from tipping over into absurdity. It's got a masterful command of irony. Because the irony is blank enough so that you can take it at face value. So that, people with no critical faculties, for instance, like Ian Miles Chong, can say, "Oh, I bet you think Robocop's political." But but even so, anybody that actually pays attention to it can see that it's being ironic about almost everything it depicts.
Yeah, absolutely. And that does feed into the kind of, including the critique I just made about the criminality, right? I mean, that it is aware that it is making every villain in a Dirty Harry villain, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and there are
is.
problems with irony, but nothing hasn't got problems. There are problems with literally everything. So
your fave is problematic.
It is, yes. Whatever it is, it's problematic. And while we've been talking about these generalities, we've kind of talked over some of the best sequences in the film, for my money, some of the best filmmaking in it, like the slow reveal of Robocop and the sections from his point of view.
Oh, I love all that. Yeah, I love all that.
It's brilliantly done.
I mean, the fade from him dying to reawakening is one of my favourite moments in cinema. The black screen, followed by the TV, the TV camera type footage, is that's one of my favourite moments in all the cinema. Yeah.
And again, incredibly compact storytelling. You're getting so much information with the commands flashing up on the screen, even down to the fact that you're seeing the inside of the workshop as they're working on him from his point of view, even that in a completely non-didactic, not in a subtle way. You're not actually being spoon-fed anything. Again, you're being told that this being is sentient. He's aware of more than they're aware that he's aware of, even at that stage in the lab.
Yeah, and and the way it sets up so much of what's to follow. You've got the fact that he can record, what people say, which is the video evidence. That's something that will come back twice in the movie at absolutely critical moments. And the introduction of Directive 4, which he can't read out because it's classified. So we, the audience, get a bit of information that Bob Morton doesn't have.
That's right. Yeah.
It's so great.
Irony.
And of course, the Robocop himself doesn't have, really.
That's right, yeah. But we know. Yeah. So we, the audience, know something that almost nobody else. I mean, only Dick Jones knows about that, and us. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't know that Dick Jones knows at this point because we don't know what it means. No. It's fantastic.
It really leads you on into it. And it's the kind of economical, joined up, thoughtful, just on a mechanical level, just efficient without seeming sort of mechanical storytelling that you so often just don't get in these sorts of movies anymore. Like you go and see these sorts of movies now, action thrillers and science fiction films, and they're so windy and pompous and overblown without bothering to take care of the basics of storytelling. And you just want to say, go and fucking watch Robocop, because this is how you do it. This is how you tell an efficient story that never makes the audience feel like they're being instructed.
Yeah. Because nothing's wasted. And while all that's going on and we're getting all that information, we're also getting treated to some beautiful visuals in that sequence.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing about that sequence that's so good. You don't see Robocop in his full pomp for a long way. He's behind a cage, and you see bits of him, and there's the baby food, and there's all of these details, and it's so well shot, that sequence as well.
The baby food is a perfect example of this sort of teetering on the edge of absurdity that I was talking about. Because it's difficult to imagine any other Hollywood film about a badass robot cop that would do something like that. That he has to be given baby food, and you show it sort of squidging out of the machine like diarrhea.
Literally.
Yeah, that is a completely unnecessary visual element that serves only to just slightly undermine it and slightly ironize it and slightly make it a little bit ridiculous and vulnerable.
Yeah, and you even have I love the little kind of character note of the corporate guy Jones taking a little taste of it, saying tastes like baby food. Yeah. It's so great.
Yeah, because it does these little bits of characterization in exactly the same way that it does the little bits of plot that come along organically as the story moves along.
Well, yeah, but the other thing I think about with this is like there's a lot. Someone telling me about short story writing and the need for efficiency in short story writing, and I can't remember who this was. It might have been Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, but saying like basically in a short story, almost every sentence has to be pulling double duty because you've only got 3,000 words to tell the story, so every single sentence has to be doing two things at once. You know, like so if you're delivering a line of dialogue, you also need to be, as well as the content of the dialogue, you need the dialogue to be telling you something about the character and their state of mind. You know, and like every single line wants to be doing two things at once, just to pack it all in, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's the kind of level of storytelling this movie is almost always working at, almost every scene. I don't think there are any wasted moments in this film at all.
Well, I think I've thought this before, actually. In terms of writing a movie is more like writing a short story than it's like writing a novel, I think. You know, says a man who's written precisely 0 novels and maybe only a couple of short stories. But it's because a short story has to have that kind of economy and efficiency. And a movie is, to a huge extent, it's something other than words. Words are, of course, an enormously important part of a movie, but it's also visuals and music and acting, and it's so many other things as well. So the words that go into the movie have to have that kind of short story efficiency, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think, I mean, funnily enough, I don't think it's any accident that a lot of the more successful, especially when it comes to horror adaptations for movies, are actually novellas rather than novels.
That's interesting.
Because actually the novella length, I think, translates quite well to movie length. And yeah, that's part of the reason why, because of that efficiency of storytelling, which translates across so well.
We're sort of talking in generalities over the film, but yeah, we talked over the, I would say, one of the weakest things in the movie, the rape scene and the
yeah.
Although
not good.
I have to confess, you know, as a 13-year-old kid, I fucking loved that when he
it was hilarious.
shoots him in the balls.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
And again, this sort of whole business with the obviously the office guy that goes postal and takes hostages, it's doing it in a very ironic way. You know, his demands are ridiculous.
Well, it's the mayor. He's just lost the election, that guy.
Yeah. Is he
and
the
I
mayor?
love that.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah. He's he's not the mayor anymore. That's kind of the problem. But yeah, no, I adore that sequence.
Well, again, though, you know, it's telling you something about how this city runs. That's the kind of person that's the mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the fact that it's the hostage negotiator is the
Yeah.
guy who is the SWAT team that later leads the assault against Robocop. And that's a nice touch because when Robocop arrives, the media just runs away from him and goes straight over to Robocop. So there's it's really efficient. It's this idea
and now
is seeded
got a
that this guy
fantastic
might be
jab
pissed
at
off.
mutually assured destruction and
With this,
the Reaganite escalation in the Cold War and Star Wars and stuff. With this
God,
nuclear board game.
It's
Nukem.
It's so good. Nukem board game.
In the midst of this dreadful news program where you get a 2-second soundbite about yes, rebels on the Mexican border and then on to more OCP propaganda.
I love that, and I love how contentless it is. The international news is just like, what the fuck? You get 2 or 3 sentences. Make no sense at all. They assume so much knowledge there, and then you get all this balls aching detail about the OCP shit. You know, it's so great.
Yeah. Well, it's not even that they're assuming knowledge, is it? It's that they're assuming disinterest.
Yeah, that's right.
They're fulfilling an obligation, like in the 90s. The Big Breakfast had to stop every now and again to have an incredibly perfunctory little news report.
Right. Yeah, because it was mandated. Yeah.
Exactly. It was one of the rules of broadcasting. If you're doing a breakfast television show, you have to have regular news and weather. So every now and again, the nonsense in the Big Breakfast house would stop and they'd cut to this guy who'd deliver, a line of news about something that was happening in the country. And then you'd be back to Johnny Vaughan or whoever. Yeah. And it's just like that. It's just, let's get this stuff that we have to talk about over with so that we can get back to the OCP propaganda and get that over in time for the Coke adverts. That's it.
It's so brutal. Well, it's like the slogan is, give us 3 minutes and we'll give you the world. I just love it. It's just like...
And I love the implication that the entire world is tearing itself to pieces in the background.
Yeah.
And this is a fantastic scene as well. Everybody in the corporate unisex toilet realizes that Dick Jones is in there, so they all run out.
This is one of the great. I love this scene. I mean, everything about this sequence. I mean, we've gone past it, but the gold swipe card keys, literally the golden key to the crapper. It's fucking fantastic. And this confrontation's brilliant. These two actors just knock the hell out of this, I think.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's really again, the casting is perfect.
Yep.
And I love Bob Morton is doing this. Oh yeah, I'm not worried. I don't care.
Oh, it's so great, isn't it? It's such a great performance.
He's doing it really well because there's no actual break in his composure, but you know that he's faking it. Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good. And that's partly because the other guy is just brutal, right? He's so in control.
Yeah.
That's great performance. Love it.
It is a great performance, yeah. If you didn't know before, you now know that Dick Jones is just a total fucking psychopath.
Oh, yeah. No, he's the real deal. And you also know, but that's the other thing, isn't it? You also know Bob Morton isn't, right? You know, he's amateur hour.
Yeah. That's right, yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of an episode of New Statesman where Alan Bastard suddenly gets sort of displaced as the most right-wing MP in the House by this other guy. And, you know, of course, Alan Bastard then devotes his entire life to just destroying this guy. Who allows it to happen because as unpleasant a specimen as he is, he's not Alan Bastard.
Alan Bastard, yeah, there you go. Yeah. No, it's so great. And again, but it's interesting as well, isn't it? Because we're back to bullies and bullying. It tells you very clearly, like, this is how the entire corporate structure runs, actually.
Well, it's this entire society.
Yeah.
The entire society is just this massive pyramid based on sadism and dominance and bullying. That's it.
God, I'm so glad this is a work of fiction, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm so glad the world isn't really like this. I'm glad we got rid of capitalism about 100 years ago when we should have done.
Yeah.
But we keep on talking in generalities, and the filmmaking is so good.
Yep.
Like just that shot there with the fizzing televisions in the foreground and the scientific workers in the foreground and Robocop in the background again behind the cage, but it's that Hitchcockian framing where something is in the background, and the shot tells you without any fuss or any bother, it just tells you something's going to happen over there where these people aren't looking.
No, it's brilliant.
Yeah, this is the work of a serious director. This is the work of a serious cineast. You know.
Yeah. Don't be fooled by the fact that it's called Robocop. This is a serious fucking movie.
Well, yeah. If you're fooled by the fact that it's called Robocop, then the joke's on you. You know.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to talk about how great Peter Weller's physical performance is as well.
Absolutely amazing. And this is a good showcase for it, this sequence, actually, as he walks out of there. Because the way he moves there, it's the hips and the shoulders just are like a quarter second ahead of the head.
Yeah.
It's just exquisite. And he spent weeks with a mime once he got the part.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
and he must have he's really tapped into what Verhoeven's going for as well, because again his physical performance teeters on the edge of ridiculous.
Yep.
But it doesn't fall over. There's never a point where you look at Robocop and you want to laugh.
No.
But he is doing he's almost doing a sort of cliched arms out swinging robot walk thing.
Yeah.
It's just on this knife edge, and that's why it works so brilliantly.
I have to give a shout out to the sound design as well.
Oh yeah, that wonderful sort of sucking noise when he walks.
Fantastic, absolutely brilliant, and it sells everything. It sells the weight of the suit, you know. It sells the physicality of him, because obviously it's it's not actually a metal suit. He'd have died if he'd worn that much metal.
The suit is a masterpiece of design. It really is. It looks so solid and heavy, and yeah, it's magnificent.
No, it's absolutely fantastic. And at the same time, there is a weird kind of sublimated fetish element to it with the black rubber around the chin. I mean, I always think that there's something slightly odd going on there, you know.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Why leave the mouth exposed at all.
It doesn't. I mean, the thing is, like, if you wanted to keep the face because you wanted the whole thing about like eye contact can diffuse a situation, then you need the whole face. Now, we know later on in the movie they did preserve the whole face, but the visor completely kills that. Because the visor, I mean, until the helmet comes off, we don't know what's underneath that visor, right, as viewers. There could just be cameras there for all we know.
Yeah. But I think part of what it's doing is quoting. It's visually quoting. It's visually quoting Batman. Mm-hmm. It's visually quoting Judge Dredd.
Yes.
But I think there's more to it than that. I think you need a human aspect to it, don't you? Because the point is that it's not a robot, it's a cyborg.
Yeah.
And Murphy's still in there. So visually, you do need a human element in the physicality of the robot. And the entire rest of it's gone. So I think without showing the eyes, which is too much at this stage, because the movie is about kind of how much of Murphy is still in there.
Sure.
And that's the question, as you say, that ends up being answered. So just in terms of making the story build to that conclusion, you can't show the eyes, you can't show the entire face. So I think you're kind of forced into the position where you have to just have the mouth. But it does create this weird, and like I think part of what they're suggesting with Robocop is that the corporation want a masked vigilante or something like that. I think it's quoting Batman quite deliberately, because I think it's like OCP want him to seem like this Zorro figure or Batman figure. I think they want that. And of course there's this whole thing about the psychology of masks. People perceive you differently if you're wearing a mask.
Yeah.
There's this old thing about if an enemy who is masked is simultaneously more intimidating but also easier to kill.
Okay.
Robocop is sort of half masked.
Yeah.
So it puts him in this weird, ambivalent, teetering position halfway between things. It's very liminal, which it's key to the entire character.
Sure. And I also feel like it feeds into the fiction another way. There was always a part of me that felt that perhaps the reason that they preserve the face and then put on the mask afterwards, it feels very much like the decision making that happens by committee.
Yeah.
You know, where one committee says, we've got to keep the face because the face is human and that'll help with diffusing the situation. And then someone else says, yeah, but we should give him a mask because then it'll look badass and fuck, you know what I mean? And it's like you end up.
Oh, I like that. So half masked is kind of a classic corporate fudge.
Yeah, exactly. It's
I like that.
Yeah. But all of that works. You know, all of that fits what's going on.
More fantastic storytelling here. I love how Emile just walks up to the window carrying this fucking automatic.
It's fucking hysterical.
Yeah.
It's hysterical.
He just taps it on the glass.
Because it's like literally these guys, like this guy cannot fill up his motorbike with petrol without committing a crime. Like he's incapable of doing anything. Like we know how much money this guy's just made from some kind of robbery. He just won't pay for anything, you know.
He probably doesn't even need petrol. He just went there to kill somebody. And we're back to bullying. That guy's a nerd. He's reading about he's studying plane geometry, and Emile is so enraged by that he has to attack him.
That's so great. Verhoeven claims that guy was authorial insert. By the way, he claims he is the guy in the gas station for whatever that's worth. I don't know.
Well, I'm the guy in the gas station as well. We're all the
right.
Guy
Well,
in
aren't
the
we
gas
all?
station.
Indeed.
Yeah.
In the world of Robocop, we're all studying plane geometry and trying not to get blown up.
That's right.
It's such a great sequence, this though.
Yeah, and we're starting to get the personalization of Robocop. You know, Murphy is starting whatever. I mean, the film is ambiguous about what's going on here. Is it that Murphy is still in there, or is Murphy kind of a software ghost echoing around inside a subroutine somewhere? And it's fine for that to just be ambiguous. You don't need to come to a conclusion about that. It works either way. That scene where he has the nightmare and wakes up and goes off program, and then this very much it's where that starts to surface in the story. Yeah.
Whilst, by the way, having one fucking amazing, gigantic explosion. I mean,
that he just walks out of, which is so cool.
So cool.
He just guns the guy's bike down.
Oh yeah. And it's a hell of a stunt, that the playing into the back of the car. I mean, that's
a great stunt. Yeah. But whereas Murphy was very by the book, you know, he didn't shoot Emile because he had an opportunity to disarm him. Robocop just fires rounds into the guy's bike wheels.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely some of that movie cop magic about how they can do that, right? They can just shoot out vehicles and know it's not gonna know exactly the impact it's gonna have, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's classic Hollywood horseshit.
Yeah.
But again, it's done with this self-awareness.
Yeah.
And that's kind of an alibi. There is kind of a sense in which the film is just insisting upon having its cake and eating it too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess look, the alibi is if anyone can pull that shit off, it's Robocop, right? Because he's good.
I love the spike that comes out like a middle finger.
It's so great. It's so great. I mean, look, bear in mind this is pre-USB,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So this has actually predicted USB. It's just made it way fucking cooler.
Well, a lot of the pleasure with watching science fiction decades down the line, particularly satirical science fiction that uses the future as kind of a metaphorical space to explore the present. So it kind of does this predictions as satirical comments on the present. Part of the pleasure of science fiction that does that is to assess how right it was, but it's also to laugh at how wrong it was. And this film is kind of uncanny, to be honest. This is one of the most accurate forecasts. I mean, it gets details wrong, but it gets loads of technical stuff right. Like people use disks to store information. That he accesses this computer in a way that interface is obviously it's old-fashioned looking, but it's quite accurate to how we interface with networks and databases now.
I mean, the joke that's been made on this podcast before is that's Windows Vista, which I think is actually about right. But given the film was made in '87, that counts as an accurate prediction.
Fucking
right?
hell, yes, yeah,
it's pretty impressive. And as you say, I mean, later on there's effectively DVD, right? We have the the execution scene. But the other thing I love is the way that it's also, when I said how, the film is both clearly futuristic and clearly 87, is the whenever we see Robocop's point of view, it uses the old American standard for video, which was of a lower quality than UK TV, with which is why it looks like it's got lines across it to us. And I love that touch. I love the fact that his vision is kind of VHS quality, sub VHS quality.
Yeah, they skimped on something in the.
Well, right. Again, you're back to that thing. You're like, well, how good does it need to be?
Yeah. This is off a bit. We don't have automated estate agents. Sadly, we still have actual estate agents.
Do you know what I mean? Sadly, for them and for us, frankly, it is a lose-lose.
This is incredible. Where his vision actually, like, he starts seeing stuff as it was in the past.
Yeah.
Literally, like Murphy's memories are actually interfering with the digital information.
That's right. And when he flashes back, notice how the screen resolution changes when he's seeing the flashbacks.
Yeah.
The flashbacks aren't occurring in this kind of degraded video format.
Absolutely.
I love that. It's such a great touch. No, this is, and again, the intelligence of that with the filmmaking, that is not something that people who haven't seen this movie 100+ times will necessarily pick up on a conscious level, and why would you? But subconsciously, that's creating an effect in the mind of the viewer,
Absolutely, yeah. Well, of course, the best things like that, you don't consciously notice them the first time you watch it. It just goes in.
Yeah.
If you like a lot of the time with stuff like that, the first time you watch it, if you consciously notice it, then it's not working.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But no, and the other thing is, like, in terms of the pacing, this is really the only point in the entire movie where it slows down. I mean, up to this point, it's been pretty action-packed. From this point on, it definitely, we're on the roller coaster from now on. But this is the one point where it really takes the pace down. I love the score as well. I think the score's really good.
We're not far off halfway through either. So
no, that's right.
Yeah, it's plot, 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 and then you get this sequence, which is, I mean, it's far from irrelevant. There's a lot of character stuff going on here.
Absolutely.
Again, look at Weller's body language there.
Yeah, no, that's it. It's so strong.
And the way he punches out the monitor, well, that's a crime. You know, if Robocop was just a machine that was incapable of disobeying this narrow set of programming parameters, he wouldn't be able to do that. That's vandalism. No. You know, so that tells you something. You're getting plot information and character information there.
Oh, it's the pivotal moment where, you know, because we've had the dreams and we've had the arrests, but this is the moment where he's now no longer. I mean, he's broken the programming at this point.
Yeah.
What? And again, talking about the future and the 80s at the same time.
I love that detail where Robocop knocks the gun out of his hand and some guy just catches it and starts dancing with it.
Oh, that is really cheesy, isn't it? But it's hilarious.
Yeah.
No, it's really good.
This is Christopher Nolan nicks this in The Dark Knight. There's a scene where Batman goes and pulls one of the mobsters out of a club, and it's very. Right. I think it's very directly drawn from that scene.
It is. It's a direct lift. And that's an interesting cut, isn't it, from the nightclub to to this?
Yeah. Yeah, because there are people for whom this world is working fine. There's this narrow little layer of people at the top where, this system is working fine for some people.
Yeah. Such a ridiculous sequence. Oh dear.
Sort of look of obligation on his face when he sees what she's done. Sort of like, right, okay, better get that. That's a lot of money right there.
Yeah. Oh, dear.
I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it looks like more trouble than it's worth to me. Maybe I'm just old.
Well, I love this moment when he walks away and the two women kind of clasp hands and smile in a genuine way that they haven't smiled to that point. It's a very small moment, but I really like it.
And they're like, you get the feeling they're pros, you know, because they see what's going on and just like, right, handbags, let's go.
Yeah. It's not like, are you going to call me as she walks out? It's
that's great.
I don't think he is. Oh, fucking hell, man.
And this, ouch, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is the moment when the strands of the plot start to join up, isn't it? This is the first contact we've had between the sort of the world of OCP and the world of Clarence and his goons.
That's it. Yeah, this is it. This is where the underworld rises up to meet the overworld, and also, but we discover as well in this scene, obviously, the connection.
Yep.
Which again, one of the things I love about this film, never really explained.
No.
How these two became, co-conspirators, how these two ended up working together. But
again, a lesser film would give you the backstory.
Right.
You don't need it. Just let it be. I mean, it's like what the film is kind of saying is, well, of course they know each other. Of course they're in league with each other. Why wouldn't they be? Because the whole point here is that it's all one system. It's all joined up. They're just aspects of each other. It doesn't need to explain, because the minute it just works, the minute you see that Clarence is in Bob Morton's apartment killing Bob Morton on behalf of Dick Jones, your brain doesn't go, what? Why? Who? Where? Your brain just goes, yeah, well, of course.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. It's also, I have to say, a wonderfully sadistic execution.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot him in the legs, have the video running, the grenade with the timer. It's fucking
his
fantastic.
face on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a ridiculously over-the-top revenge as well for what he did.
Isn't it?
It's
my God,
Dick Jones is going to be fine. He's not going to lose any money or any prestige or any power because this little pipsqueak, got his project in at the expense of Ed.209. He's going to be fine. It's just, you slightly irritated me once, so I'm going to fucking torture you to death.
But, which is one thing, but also I'm going to film myself giving you the smuggest speech you've ever heard in your life to watch in the last moments. I mean, it's just, it's such... I mean, that is villainy on such a level, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's
right.
What's so great about it.
And it's so self-conscious as well. You just know the guy he just adores the idea of himself as a villain. And again,
I've got the theory that he's got a collection of those DVDs at home, and that's what he uses for pornography.
Yeah,
right?
probably.
That's what he uses.
Yeah,
he just sticks on one of his execution DVDs. Like, yeah. And we're into another absolutely glorious sequence here. I love this scene.
Yeah. There's so much juvenile male posturing in this film.
There is, isn't there?
Yeah.
And that's another thing, I think, when you talked earlier about this movie having its cake and eating it, that's a really good example of that, where this film does that. You know, where it's like we get to take pleasure in this, you know, ludicrous stuff, but we're also like, you know, we've got the alibi of, yeah, but we know it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But the dunk in the fingers in the wine.
It's such a wanky thing to do. It's
what the fuck is that? It's so great.
if somebody who actually did things like that, you know, you just go, what the fuck's wrong with that guy?
Yeah.
What a tosser, you know.
I mean, interestingly, the answer is given to us on screen. The answer to what the fuck is wrong with this guy is cocaine, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like,
And
which again, very 80s. You know?
The weird thing is that Clarence dips his fingers in the wine, and then he doesn't lick his fingers. What he does is he puts them to his nose.
Oh no, he snorts
He
it.
snorts
I mean,
it. Like,
what the hell is that?
what's being implied there? Is he implying that the other guy puts coke in his vino, or is he just like, I take everything in through my nose now?
Yeah, exactly. I snort all drugs, including alcohol.
Yeah.
Who knows? Man?
Yeah.
Who knows? It's such a great. I tell you, one of the things I really would love to know. I mean, I have that thing where I haven't studied the detail of how this film got made in any kind of detail whatsoever. Like, I really haven't. But I would love to know if that was an improvised thing or something that was in the script.
Yeah.
The fingers in the wine glass. I'm almost certain it was improvised, but it's such a great.
It does.
It's something I've spent entirely too much time thinking about.
I'd love to believe it was improvised. I'd love to believe that the other guy picking the glass up and drinking from it anyway was improvised as well.
Yeah, but I'd also love to think it was scripted. I'd love to think that a writer thought to put that in. Actually,
Yeah.
you know, I think either way, it's a thing of immense beauty.
I hate to sort of burst the bubble, but I suspect it's one of those things where it's sort of halfway in between both, where it sort of evolved during rehearsals or on set or something. But I do have
it was probably like
I do have this kind of aversion to learning the behind the scenes stuff about movies I really love. It's a weird thing, but movies that really matter to me, I kind of don't want to know. You know,
weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's something about the myth of the magic, right? It's just that feeling of like, this is something. I mean, like, you know, any truly exceptional movie is greater than the sum of its parts, right? Because for an exceptional movie to happen, what has to happen is every single element of the film, you know, in front of and behind the camera, has to be working at a very high level.
Yeah.
That's how a great movie gets. So there's so many ways a movie can go wrong. There's so many elements that can fuck it. I mean, it's kind of a miracle any movie ever gets made, let alone is good. And when it's exceptional, there is a kind of alchemy. There is, absolutely. And normally what alchemy is every single person involved with this worked their arses off and was really fucking good. And maybe in some cases there was some luck involved as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a mixture of the two things.
Yeah. But I do know, yeah, I feel exactly the same way. I don't want to kind of, I don't want to look under the hood. I just don't.
Yeah. No, I think it is just this feeling of not wanting the bubble burst.
Yeah.
You don't want to see what's off camera.
And it's kind of you know, it's kind of silly because the movie's right here. I can watch it any time I want. I'm not going to feel differently about it if I understand how bits of it are done. But yeah, I don't know.
He beats the shit out of this guy.
He really does. It's just like, how many windows can you throw a guy through?
But of course, that's why Murphy's death has to be absolutely appalling, so that you'll accept this.
Yeah, that's right.
Which,
that's right.
you know, I don't actually accept police brutality under any circumstances. But
no,
within the confines of watching a movie, you know.
No, but look, I mean, that's the aspect of the film where it's not a cop movie; it's a revenge movie, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's
revenge from beyond the grave, right?
Yeah, that's another genre it does, isn't it? It kind of does the I spit on your grave thing. Obviously, it's not a you know a movie about a woman who's raped and left for dead and stuff like that genre usually is, but it's something in the same vein.
No, it's absolutely a revenge fantasy. It's part of what's going on, no question. But it's also a Western. So
it's also a Western. Yeah, this is. So it's interesting that the directives flash up on his internal monitor. It suggests to me that there's an element of it being his choice. It's because it wouldn't have to happen if it was just something that he had to do.
That's interesting. You see, I interpret that as he's getting towards the edge of breaking programming.
Yeah,
and that's why it's coming up. Like it's a warning.
Yeah, it's like saying but the fact that it flashes up on the screen, it's like saying, yeah, remember Directive 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
Which indicates that he could just say, fuck Directive 3. So there's still a choice there. He chooses not to kill Clarence. He chooses to bring him in.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think for me, that's one of those moments that is kind of is very liminal. It's like, what does this mean? Is it his programming reasserting itself? Is it a suggestion from his programming that he could ignore?
Yeah. Like so many things in this film, it's open. It is open.
Yeah.
I love by the way, I love the design of the OCP building. I love that sort of.
Oh, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks like it's a series of hexagons that have sort of square chunks cut out of them. It's, yeah. I don't know why, but it's great. It's on a par with some of the. It's on a par with the Tyrrell building in Blade Runner.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Kind of this pyramid with disconnected panels floating apparently in midair.
Yeah.
Terrific matte. I miss matte paintings. I think one of the great tragedies of cinema is that we've lost matte painting.
You know what? It's funny. I caught. I think it was last night. I caught half an hour of the Tim Burton Batman.
Yeah.
And there's some beautiful stuff on that.
Yeah.
Just the view outside of Grisham's window.
Yeah.
Of Gotham City with the huge head statues on either side of the window. It's the moments like that. Just think, and you just. I was just looking at it thinking like, yeah, you just wouldn't.
No. It just it has an organic materiality to it and a realism to it that's that just isn't there in a lot of cinema now.
Yeah. And just straight up artistry, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When you think about some of those amazing sort of shots of the Death Star and so on in Star Wars, they're actually paintings,
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is almost a denouement to the film that goes wrong. It's almost like the last act, He's figured out who the big bad is. He's gone there on his own. And then at the last minute, the film kind of goes, no.
Oh, no, we're doing something else here, kids. Yeah. No, it's so great.
Because this is, ultimately, our hero is, he's still at this point, he's still property. He's still a mechanism
he's
that's...
product.
Product.
Yeah.
And he hasn't sufficiently broken out of that... I mean, I think it is kind of about, the metaphor is kind of about breaking free of a relationship of slavery to, corporate ownership. I think that's really what it is. I mean, it's lots of other things too. It's about the question of where does human intelligence end and machine intelligence begin, that sort of classic sci-fi stuff. But I think in terms of the political metaphor, it really is that Robocop hasn't yet done enough to stop being a commodity.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I kind of, I read it slightly more kind of fatalistically than that. I think it's just about like the hooks that they get in you that you don't even know you have.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the same thing from a different angle, because one of the things about capitalism is that it turns us into commodities. It turns human beings into commodities. So, I think this is what all robots in science fiction are kind of about. They're kind of about the fact that in modernity we are made into the same kinds of things as the things that we make.
Yeah, sure.
And here's the first glimpse of the eye. Again, there's such symbolism there, isn't there?
Yeah. And it's really fucking creepy too at that point, I think.
Yeah.
It's really disturbing. This is such a great fight, though.
Yeah. I mean, I love Ed.209, how ridiculous he is and how crap he is. Yes. But he is also, he's
fucking dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, absolutely.
Part of that's kind of the whole point of the opening scene with him isn't it? That part of what's dangerous about him is that he's so complete. He's such a completely hopeless, blunt instrument. Like,
yeah, that's right.
This ridiculous fucking monster is just letting off rockets in the middle of Dick Jones's office.
So great. And the animation there around the rockets, I love that. That little, you seeing it slide into place.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pure geekery, sci-fi geekery, but it's beautifully done.
Yeah. The stop motion animation is fantastic.
Oh, it's and again, the sound design is incredible.
Yeah.
the way it growls and the stomping and the...
And this wonderful teetering just on the edge of absurdity, and I think
good.
kind of, because if it never tipped over into absurdity, it would be boring. It has to do it at least once, and this is where it does it. It lets it.
This
be
is
absurd.
it. It just commits, doesn't it? It's like, fuck it, we're doing this bit.
We're going to stop teetering. We're going to actually do a comedy thing where the robot goes, whoa!
Literal pratfall down the fucking stairs. And then crying like a fucking like a baby, like a baby throwing a tantrum, a toddler throwing a tantrum.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's so great.
And this is a very crucial scene, because this makes it impossible to read this as a simple story about how cops are great. Absolutely. You can't just read this as about cop heroism, because of this scene. You've got some cops who were saying, no, we can't do this. He's one of us, but they're overruled. The system overrules the individuals.
Well, that's what's so powerful about it. There's that local loyalty from the people who serve with him, but it's not enough to override, as you say, the system. The wider power structure, which just is going to stomp him down.
That's right. There's a human connection on an individual level from individuals, but there is this overarching system in which those people are trapped and powerless that will nevertheless just do as it's told by the power structure above it. And that's, again, the guy leading this SWAT team here is the same guy from earlier who has a grudge against him.
Yeah.
The system will always find these petty, nasty little people who will do its bidding for it because of their own grudges and ambition and stuff. Yeah.
But it's also like, this is Directive 4, right?
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
This is the systemic version of Directive 4.
That's right. And this is, we talked earlier about what I think, the role of the police actually is in society. This is the police doing that. This is the police enforcing the rule of capital, isn't it? I mean, it's explicit in the scene in the office where Dick Jones says to him, You don't get to rebel against us. You're our property.
Yeah, your product.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also, I mean, the fact that this echoes the execution scene in certain respects. I mean, that kind of...
So again, the echo, as above, so below.
Yeah.
It's all criminality all the way down. It spirals down from the top in these sort of circles of criminality.
Yeah.
Violence and domination and bullying. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to say, I like the fact that he's rescued by a woman. I really do.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, his partner.
Yeah.
Who's badass and with whom there's no romantic subplot or anything like that. And
oh, thank God for that, right? I mean,
this
absolutely.
This is so weirdly ballsy. Just almost immediately after a stop-motion animation scene.
I know!
With Ed.209.
What the fuck?
They put in a sequence with deliberately bad stop-motion animation of a big monster.
I know.
And the SUX instead of SUV. It's just, again, the sledgehammer to crack a nut.
No, I love it.
But it's done with such self-awareness that...
I tell you what, that one, it's the sheer joy of that too.
Yeah.
It's the sheer glee. I mean, that is just like... If you're not charmed by that, you're incapable of being charmed by a movie, I would submit. Yeah. I just, that is delightful.
And the wonderful, just completely brazen, balls to the wall tonal shift there from this tragic, grueling scene where Robocop is turned upon by his brother officers and he's just rescued at the last second by, to this. There's a dinosaur prancing around. It looks like Q, the winged serpent. What? And then into the most overtly ridiculous news segment as well. This guy, unemployed.
This is one of my favourite. That guy's been my profile picture on Facebook on more than one occasion, I'll have you know. I love that guy.
Yeah. And the bit in the news report where the Reagan Star Wars missile defense system is blowing up ex-presidents.
Yeah. It's just wiped out Santa Barbara and like 3 ex-presidents.
Yeah. Including its implied Reagan himself, which is just delicious even now.
Right.
But at the time, I mean, it's difficult to imagine people in cinemas not cheering and applauding when that came on.
Yeah.
And Clarence
those
absolutely
that...
convinced that he's scored with this woman.
It's God's gift to secretaries. Yeah. He's, again, a wonderful character because he's just so vile.
Yeah.
He's so, like, unapologetically vile. And as you say, again, there is that thing about toxic masculinity. He's so convinced of his own, like, charm, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Or maybe just his own alpha maleness, right? Like, he's so convinced that makes him kind of...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so much play on Dick Jones's name as well. Almost everybody that talks to Dick Jones says Dick in this sarcastic way at some point. And it's perfect because there's so much dick swinging. 2 men can't talk to each other in this film without swinging their dicks at each other.
And almost all of this film does involve 2 men talking to each other. There's almost no women in it.
Yeah.
So yeah. No, it's great.
But at least the one woman who is in it is portrayed pretty bloody well. You know, she's not she's not given any demeaning things to do or anything like that.
The scene where she gets knocked out is really, really unfortunate, and it's the one I think it's quite a bad misstep and it's quite a bad joke. But other than that, but to only have one instance of that in a movie made in '87 is pretty impressive.
It's pretty good, yeah. And here we really do get to the question of how these guys know each other.
Yeah.
And
I think there's so clearly a relationship here, isn't there?
Absolutely. I think they probably went to the same private school. I think Clarence Boddicker's probably from quite a well-off family. That's my reading of it. They probably met at public school or something like that.
That's interesting.
Or private school, as in America.
Yeah. I mean, there's a theory maybe also that they were in... that they met at a cocaine party somewhere along the lines, right?
That's a good one too.
I mean, that's the other possibility.
Well, that doesn't have to... That could be the same thing, Private school, cocaine parties. But yeah, my read on Clarence is that he's probably from quite an affluent family, quite an upper-class family. And he just chose to do this version of the same job. Because
that's interesting.
They are essentially in exactly the same job. I mean, the film makes no bones about that whatsoever. It's just that Dick went into the corporate wing of this, and Clarence went into the murdering people and bank heists wing of it. It's
yeah.
It's individual versus structural violence. They were in the education system that was preparing these affluent young boys for a career of violence, and Dick Jones chose administering structural violence, and Clarence chose committing personal violence. That's it.
Yeah, he just decided to get more hands-on. Yeah. This scene.
Yeah. Back in the post-industrial wasteland of...
Yeah.
And Robocop is
I love this.
Smashed up. And
God,
he's even... After all this, look, it makes a point of showing you that he's got the words OCP written on his fucking head.
Stamped on his head, yeah.
Branded.
I mean, there's also the fact of the way he puts the drill to his head. It's very kind of visually reminiscent of a suicide, right?
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is visually amazing.
This is one of the great effect shots of cinema, as far as I'm concerned.
It is.
Right here.
Again, the slow partial reveal.
Yep.
The same trick.
The distorted mirror.
Yep. But yeah, you've said it before in other episodes of this podcast, but I agree with you. It's a stunning effect.
Yep.
It doesn't look... Because it doesn't look like an effect. And your brain...
No, that's right.
Your brain kind of looks at it and goes... That's not possible.
Yeah. And the thing is, they built it. Like, now you do it digitally.
That's right.
And there would be no mystery. But staring at it there, staring at it here now, looking at it, my mind is still confounded.
Yeah. That's one of the many problems with CGI, which is that when you see something impossible like this in a film now, there is always a bit of your brain that goes... Yeah, but I know how they did that. They just did it with digitals.
That's right.
And it's incredibly affecting performance.
Yeah.
the quiet way he says, "Leave me alone."
Oh, it's
Not
so good.
not hostile or angry or anything. It's just,
Nope.
don't leave me alone. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Meanwhile,
now
the cops have been on strike for 5 minutes, so naturally,
so naturally the entire city has exploded
the entire
into.
city has decided to smash the shit out of everything. So that's how the world works, kids.
Well, I think if the cops just suddenly stopped working, and everybody knew that, this sort of thing probably would happen in pockets. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
I don't believe for a moment that without the police force, the entirety of society would erupt into just the war of all against all and everybody slaughtering each other because suddenly it's allowed. I don't believe that. But stuff like this would probably happen in places,
Yeah.
like in places like it's being depicted in this scene. But yeah, it always reminds me of what Steven Pinker said. He said, as a kid I was an anarchist, and then the police went on strike or something in my hometown, and there was crime. So I realised that anarchism was wrong. And you fucking idiot, Steven.
Oh God, yeah, that's that whole fucking conservative is a liberal who's been mugged. You know, it's like,
Well, also, you don't fucking know what anarchism is. You fucking idiot.
yeah, well, yeah, sure.
You should have spent more time reading and less time on Epstein's plane.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The other thing I like about this scene, though, is it really does, because we actually haven't got to see these guys interact, and I love how dysfunctional they are as a gang.
Well, I love how they're like a family as well. Like,
That's interesting.
It reminds me of how the young ones are actually a family.
Right.
'Cause
Right. That's a good shout.
Mike is dad, and Neil is mum, and Vivian is the brother, and Rick is the sister. That's the basic setup. And this is the same. This is the same. Clarence is a parent, and God, what's the actor's name? The guy from Twin Peaks, Ray. Can't remember his name. He's a parent as well. He's a grown up, and these two, like Emil and the chap who's got the big gun now, they're the warring siblings.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I do like the character note of Clarence blowing up his the guy's car.
Yeah.
Just being like, no, actually, you don't get. I'm the only guy in the gang with an SUX. I'm going to blow your car.
Yeah, look, those two are like the grown-ups laughing as the kids play.
Yeah, that's right.
There is a family dynamic there.
Definitely. But also they're a gang of bullies, right?
They
And they're constantly one-upping each other. They're constantly,
Yep.
there's that constant kind of pecking order thing happening.
And Clarence has got the tracker, so that's why the film made a point of showing us the tracker twice.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. No, there is not a wasted shot in this film.
No.
There is not. Yeah.
Just watching it now.
I can't look. It's that. I mean, we're back with that physical effect.
Yeah, that is an amazing effect.
Absolutely
And I like that
astonishing.
the mask stays off from here on as well.
Yes.
Like, one of the problems with making a sequel, I mean, I'm glad they never did, but
Yeah, me too.
one of the problems with making a sequel is that, like, why would he put the mask back on? He just
Right.
wouldn't, would he, after this?
But how can he not?
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's what he looks like, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the image. Robocop
Yeah.
on the posters has his mask on, but
Yeah.
it's absolutely imperative to the story, the development of the character, that the mask comes off and stays
Yeah.
off.
That's right.
So that just right there, that should have, somebody says, oh, it made money, so we need to do another one. Somebody should have said, no, we can't do that because he's got to keep his mask off.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you're
Yeah.
right, we can't make a sequel. That's how that conversation should have gone.
And that's the end of that conversation.
Exactly.
In my world. Yeah, absolutely. Or, unless you decide to go balls out and have him not have a mask for the entire second movie, which would have been an interesting decision, and
Yeah.
and an expensive one. But
Yeah. See, even that detail, he's now recalibrated his aim using
yeah.
a human's eyes.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah.
He's now no longer relying on the computer programming. He's relying on not only his own eyes without the visor and the screen, but also on the recalibrated aim that he's acquired from her with her help.
Yeah.
It's
a moment of trust too, and it's a moment of trust between two professionals. I love that. I really love that moment.
Yeah. And almost physical intimacy that isn't sexual or romantic. It's plot, it's theme, and its characterization.
Yeah.
All in one little occurrence that's completely relevant.
Yeah. And none of that, and that exchange there, none of that bullshit about knock out the girl or incapacitate her so she can't be involved. You don't have to be here. We're partners. Get the car. Yeah. That's the conversation.
That's it. Yeah. We passed over the bit where he delivers the amazing line, "I can feel them, but I can't remember them," which I think that's so brilliant because it's the wrong way round. Any other film would have it the other way around, wouldn't they? I can remember them, but I can't feel them. Yeah. And this film inverts that, and it makes it a little tricky to work out exactly what he means. But that's good.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. And as you say, what it does is it preserves the ambiguity of, is this, to what degree is Murphy a ghost in the machine at this point? To what degree is he, just a bit of broken code, a weird bit of organics? And to what degree is he still a human? To what degree is he still a person? Does he have personhood? The film doesn't make any attempt to answer that question.
No.
Which I love.
And I think if I had to come down anywhere, I would say that it's neither. It's not that he's Murphy or Robocop. It's that, there was Murphy and then there was Robocop. And then by the end of the film, there is this new entity or person, however you want to put it, that has, in a sense, self-created, which is why it's so important that he takes the mask off and it stays off,
Yeah, absolutely.
Into the toxic waste.
Yes!
Very cartoony, but
it's
fantastic.
And again, talking about the way this film has those classic kind of action movie beats, and I mean this, especially as a kid, I just remember being. I mean, not that I don't love it now, but I just fucking hell, man.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? Look at his fingers melting. The skin is literally slipping off the edge of his fingers.
Oh, it's so good. And every single time you see him, he's degraded further. Like the effects...
he's more melty.
They've elevated it from shot to shot. It's God knows how many hours it took to produce... I mean, what is he on camera for, like 30 seconds like that in total, maybe?
Yeah. And again, any other film would linger on that and show you too much.
Yeah.
That's a happy accident there, where the car flies past and the hubcap flies off.
The hubcap,
slides past the camera. The director must have been really pleased when that came
that's
back
just
in.
Perfect,
Yeah. And I love just no loyalty whatsoever. Get away from me. No,
get the fuck away from me.
Yeah. Fuck off.
No, whatever you've got, it might be catching, and I do not fucking want it. Yeah. No, it's brutal. Absolutely. And I love the steam coming off him.
He just liquefies up the screen.
Yeah. And again, I completely I think that's what the waste was doing to him from the inside. Right?
That's right. He's gradually turning into just this sack of liquid.
Just this soup.
Yeah. If Clarence hadn't hit him with the car, he would eventually sort of just puddled on the floor and burst.
Yeah.
Ah, you bastard.
Oh. So, I fucking love this. Talk about, this is classic action movie sequence in terms of, the way the balance of power shifts.
Yeah, one way then
about
the other.
Every 5 seconds.
Yeah. And the fantastic ruined industrial scenery is just gorgeous.
Yeah.
I love entropy and ruins, especially industrial ruins, and this looks fantastic. That looks like it looks almost like a Roman aqueduct or something in the background. It's fantastic.
It's huge, isn't it?
It is. It's monumental. It's suitably monumental for the moment.
Exactly. And again, that's a Western as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely,
I mean, this is you'd shoot this in Monument Valley if you were shooting a Western.
Yeah. And even down to what's going on here, he's cheating. This is 1-to-1, but the other guy's coming up from behind, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, but also so's Murphy's partner. They're both moving
That's
and
true.
It's who's going to get there first.
Yeah.
Oh.
But it's not going to work because he's made of iron or whatever he's made of.
Yeah.
I got him, Clarence. I love how he's so pleased.
Yeah.
He's telling Daddy.
Yeah.
And she blows him the fuck up.
She's like, "Fuck you, man."
Yeah.
And I love, and the way that Clarence's celebration just drops off there is
Yeah.
great. You know, it's like, "Fuck, man."
And then the music just stops.
Yep.
And he actually does stick it through him, doesn't he? And like,
Yeah.
it would already be over about 3 times if he wasn't half robot. And then, the computer spike comes back.
The USB comes back.
Yeah. So again, nothing wasted there. Even that joke.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that, I mean, it's a small deal, but the splash of blood on Robocop's chest when he pulls the spike out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just...
Villain deaths are very important.
Yes.
They really are very important. A film that doesn't have a satisfying villain death, it can be great. Even the villain can be great. But if the villain dies in a way that isn't satisfying, it goes for nothing. Like it's one of the big problems with The Dark Knight. The Joker. I understand why, because they didn't realize when they were filming that there was never going to be any chance for Heath Ledger's Joker to come back. But he just ends the film dangling, and it just lets the air out, doesn't it? It's just kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because it obviously, with Batman, you do have Batman's pathology being he doesn't kill people, so
Yeah.
But yeah, dramatically, it's tough. Yeah, and it would have been better, obviously, if the Joker had come back in Rises, but it wasn't to be.
Yeah,
I love how fast this is as well now.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. Now Bodica's dead. We just need to get the fuck on with it.
That's right. Yeah, there's a sense in which Bodica is kind of the main, not the main villain, but he's the main obstacle, isn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
The real main villain, the complete system, is just untouchable. That's the answer to why this film ends in the weird way that it does, with none of the sort of corporate bad guys apart from Dick Jones being punished. The reason why that happens is because the system just doesn't get punished.
No, that's right.
You can't arrest the system.
No.
It's certainly not if you're just one guy. But he does get Dick Jones, which is kind of the individual within the system that he's got a personal grudge against.
Well, that's where ultimately it's not ultimately it's a revenge narrative.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he gets his revenge.
Yeah.
And what's nice about the movie, I think, for me, is that it manages to be an incredibly satisfying revenge narrative, but it also shows the hollowness of that revenge.
Yeah.
Because in a wider sense, he's still OCP, he's still product, and he's still part of a system that's completely corrupt.
Absolutely, yeah. Again, I love that he plugs the videoed proof about Dick Jones into their computer using the computer spike that's still got Clarence's blood all over
blood on it.
So you got blood transfer from Clarence's throat right into the computer on the OCP boardroom. Yeah.
So great.
But no, again, another film would kind of have Robocop bringing down OCP, and while that would be superficially more satisfying, it would defang the satire, wouldn't it? Because the satire is all about the fact that this is an overpowering, completely inescapable system.
Yeah,
and that's kind of nihilistic, and it's kind of pessimistic, and it doesn't offer an alternative, but it's a bit more honest, and it's a bit more brutal, and it's a bit more truthful.
Well, look, that's why it's my jam, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. That's why I love, a big part of why I love this movie so much, because it is, it doesn't. It's like, no, the system's still there. Yeah.
But Dick Jones does get hit the classic villain death, which is the fall. The fall from the great height. Yeah. I love the villain fall.
I do. Although I have to confess, although this is, I think, the better movie in almost every way, I do think that Alan Rickman's fall is slightly better.
It is better. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
again, it's just such an abrupt ending.
It is. It's just, right, it's over.
Yeah, it's
very.
like done.
I mean, you've talked about it being like a Western. It's very classic Hollywood in a way, because it's one of the things
Yeah.
about old movies. Old movies just end.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. The bad guy goes down in a hail of bullets, and that's it.
That's
Roll
right.
Credits.
Plot wraps up. Maybe a pithy last line. The end. That's it.
Yeah.
And
No,
that's what
it's
you
so-
get
and
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and again, like in the era of the kind of Marvel movie, you expect the kind of post-credit sequence and the reconciling and going to the hospital and seeing Lewis and all that. No, fuck all that. We're done.
Yeah.
The bad guy got it. The system's still in place. Robocop's calling himself Murphy, and fuck knows. Good
Robocop-
luck, everybody.
Robocop identifies himself as Murphy in response to the old man's peculiar question, "What's your name?" I mean,
Yes.
does he not know who this is? I mean,
Nice shooting, son. What's your name?
Yeah.
I mean, there you
What?
go. That's a Western right there, isn't it? That's,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
And that's the only reason for that to be in there, and
Yeah.
so that he can reply Murphy, which
Yeah.
I'm told that audiences at the time were shouting that out before
Nice.
Peter Weller delivers the line.
But the other thing that's great is that the movie undercuts it, because he says Murphy, and then the very next thing you see is the word Robocop.
Again, yeah.
It's
Again,
like-
that weird, ambiguous
Yeah.
liminality. Yeah.
Yeah.
That also that manages to be all that. It's ambiguous and it's liminal and it's kind of self-contradictory and ironic, but at the same time, it doesn't disrupt it as a dramatic experience.
No.
You don't feel yourself thrown out of it by the ambiguity.
No, that's right, and it doesn't stop it being fundamentally like a kick-ass Western ending to a film.
Yeah.
It still is that.
It's a real tightrope walk, this film, in terms
Yeah.
of artistry. It really is.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Well, Jack, this has been an absolute joy. Thank you so much for, bringing back watching Robocop with Kit Power. And this has been watching Robocop with Kit Power and Jack Graham. And as the credits roll, Jack, if you want to let the people who've been listening to this commentary track know where they can find you on the internet should they wish to discover more of your work.
Yeah, you can find links to pretty much everything and updates to pretty much everything I do on my Twitter, which is @_Jack_Graham_. I've, for a good few years now, been writing a blog which is called Sheboogin Graffiti. That's spelt as you would expect, except that there's only one O in it. And Sheboogin Graffiti is part of Eruditorum Press, so if you Google either of those phrases, you will find me. I've been in loads of different podcasts over the years, including my own, the Shabcast, which is part of Pex Lives, and many of them with Kit here. And the project that I'm engaged in at the moment, that I think is most urgent and most proud of, is a co-project with my friend Daniel Harper called I Don't Speak German. It's a podcast in which Daniel, usually week by week, sometimes fortnight by fortnight, tells me what he learned from 3 years now of doing a very strange thing, to be honest, that I kind of admire and find frightening all at the same time, which is spending his time listening to the podcasts and live streams and YouTube videos of Nazis and white supremacists and fascists and people like that, the alt-right, the far-right, the white nationalists. He's listened to all this stuff and he tells me about it in detail and these people and what they think and say on our podcast, I Don't Speak German, which you can find at Libsyn. It's on Apple Podcasts. And again, you will find we've got a Twitter account now, which is, I believe, @IDSGpod. And you can find updates to that again on the Twitter @_Jack_Graham_.
And I recommend heartily doing all of those things. Yeah, I don't speak German. I think all I want to say about that, based on what Jack said, is it is often as horrifying as it sounds. It is, I would suggest, slightly more entertaining than you might expect given the premise. But it is absolutely worth your time. I think it's a really important project, and I'm just really proud to be friends with the people who are producing it, frankly, because I think it's really important work. So. Great stuff, Jack. Thanks so much again for coming on the show. This has been a joy. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
This has been great fun. I mean, we've done commentaries together before, but I did kind of come into this a bit nervous because I was thinking, what can I possibly say that loads of people haven't said before? And I probably have repeated loads of stuff that previous people have said. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this.
Stuff. Cool. All right.
Thanks for having me.
No. Anytime, man. And yeah, maybe we'll well, your favourite movie of all time is The Shining, and we've already done that. But yeah, I'm sure we'll do another commentary down the line.
I have other favourite movies of all time, depending on how I feel. So
okay, great. We'll work something out. All right. and stopping recording.
So that's it. That's our show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for downloading and listening to Watching Robocop with Kit Power. Just a reminder, as ever, if you are interested in supporting my work financially in order to help me produce these podcasts and my written work, if you go over to patreon.com/Kit Power, for as little as $1 a month, you will get exclusive content from me every single week. Whether that's early access to a review or a story or an excerpt from a novel or audio. This podcast, for example, Patreon backers have already heard it. They got it a week or so ago, and you will get that early access. And again, it's a mixture of written work and audio work. Some of it's exclusive, some of it's early access, but it's a really primarily it's a way of getting my work ahead of everybody else as a thank you for supporting me on a monthly basis. And obviously it makes the project financially viable in terms of paying for hosting fees and so forth and so on. So thank you so much to every single one of my Patreon backers for your continued support. As you know, as I tell you every week, it means the world to me to have your support. And just hey, all of you, thank you for listening, thank you for tuning back in. One of the things that I'm struggling with right now is the state of the world in 2019. I'm not finding it a fun place to be in a lot of ways, but I am becoming more and more convinced in a completely non-ironic way that one of the most important things we can do collectively in the face of the stuff we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis is to find joy, find happiness, and where possible spread it. And I'm really grateful to Jack Graham for reminding me that one of the sources of happiness in my life is sitting and watching Robocop with a friend. So I'm going to continue to do it, and I hope you're going to continue to tune in and listen, and I hope when you do, it just makes your day a little more fun, and it puts a smile on your face. That's all I can ask for. So thank you so much for your time. Watching Robocop will return, and it won't be as long between episodes next time. I do promise you that. So thank you, talk soon, and until next time, go Robo!